Welcome back to a brand new reaction. Today we're going to be reacting to Film Theory. What did FNaF 2 even tell us about the lore? So, I watched the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie recently, and honestly, in my general opinion, I think it was peak. Not gonna lie. It could just be the FNaF fan of me thinking that, but not too sure. Let me know in the comments down below. What did you guys think of the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie? I like to see your guys' opinion. But yeah, let's not waste any more time. Film Theory will be down in the link in the description down below, and let's not waste any more time and get straight into the reaction.
Five Nights at Freddy's 2 changed the lore. Yeah, this movie straight up took one look at the games and said, I can do that better, and it might be fixing all of the problems we've had with the timeline because of it. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that's possessing your YouTube homepage. The only way to make sure it doesn't destroy the whole website? Open the subscribe button-shaped music box and let it rip. So after years of waiting and more theories than you can count on one hand, the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie has finally hit theaters. I have to say, the culture around this movie really surprised me. People I followed for years for other things came out of the woodwork to express their love for this series with this movie's release. And that's just so much fun. And like, it just really created an environment in the theater that felt like peak 2010s midnight cinema releases. Team Theorist actually did a group outing watching the whole movie together, and we really appreciated the energy of our audience. Also, shout outs to the rad employee at the Cinemark Bistro here in Raleigh who talked to me on the way out of the theater. Yeah, here's the theory that I promised we'd make, and sorry I didn't catch your name. My brain was in full theory crafting mode, but thanks for saying hi. But speaking of theory crafting, dude, there is just so much to talk about here. Like, first off, the fact that my friend, former film theorist, and official movie star voice actor Matthew Patrick completely disappeared into his role for this movie. Like, not gonna lie, if I didn't know that Matt were Toy Bonnie in this, I wouldn't have been able to clock it, in a positive way. But other than that, oh boy, does this movie do a lot for FNaF lore. So much so that when Tom and I had our little huddle talk after the movie came out, we both came away with so many questions and ideas left to explore. Like, what was up with that dream sequence Vanessa had? The puppet seems to have new powers here? What does that mean for the future of the series? And oh god, a second mic has appeared in the movie theater. That right there is surprisingly huge.
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen the movie already, that you just saw is, by the way, spoilers, obviously. That you just saw is Michael Afton. Yeah. Not Jeremy Fitzgerald, but Michael Afton.
So today, I want to go through this movie and its plot to hit the biggest points of discussion and theorize about them. And by the end of our theory today, we're going to have a clear picture of what the future of the FNaF movies is going to look like. Because we're definitely getting like a dozen of these things. But here's the TLDW. The FNaF movies are Scott going back to tell the real story he always wanted to tell and putting the pieces of his mistakes back together again. Get your Freddy masks ready and hug an animatronic chicken, loyal theorists. We will always belong to the theorizing. So the film opens in 1982, where we're introduced to a new character named Charlotte Emily attending a birthday party in the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. This one is different than the location we've seen in the first movie, like we talked about in previous theories. Now, before, we've called this character Charlie because that was her nickname in other franchise material, but for simplicity's sake, and also because this version of the character ends up being way different than any other version of Charlie
with Game Charlie, she's a bit of like more of a protector, and this movie Charlie is more of a vengeful spirit, so to speak.
We're just going to be calling the movie version of this character Charlotte to line up with everything we see in the movie. Overall, she's a bit of a strange kid, has an obsession with the puppet animatronic in this location, and is friends with a young Vanessa Afton. Off in the corner, she sees Afton dressed up as Golden Bonnie lure a kid into the back of the pizzeria, and when she tries to warn the parents at the party, they're honestly pretty huge jerks and ignore her, like comically so. The adults in this movie are just terrible people looking at you, Wayne Knight the teacher.
Although we really haven't had many good parents in this franchise. William Afton, most definitely not a good parent. He uses his children as test subjects and doesn't even mourn over their deaths. Henry does mourn over his daughter's death, but she only died because of Henry's own negligence. And Edwin, he literally got obsessed with his work and ignored his wife and son. So what does that say about that?
The lawyer from the previous movie is back, and you know, at least he was cool. Anyway, because of this, Charlotte goes back on her own to try to rescue the kid, and successfully gets him away from Afton, only for her to run back onto the pizzeria's stage, scream, and then die. Afton stabbed her off camera, and her body falls into the arms of the marionette puppet, in a genuinely awesome, if depressing shot. It's also funny because I straight up said in our last theory that it would be cool if like the camera panned up to reveal that Charlotte had been stabbed, and that's exactly what happens, but that wouldn't really make sense with what was being sold as an accident. And yet somehow, in a little bit of a baffling move, it still is sold as an accident. Like, I went to the movie a couple of times and I tried to read through all of the newspapers about the accident that flashed up during the opening credits, and at least the parts that were visible didn't really have an explanation for how Afton convinced people that Charlotte somehow, like, fell onto a knife in her back multiple times. Like, it's a little bit strange. Only one of the articles really said that foul play was suspected, and like, yeah, obviously. But hey, you know, maybe I'm just not super
He just
creative.
had to get rid of Witness,
20
which was
years,
her.
confirming our previous theory that these movies take place in the early 2000s. So this one is in 2002.
Once he knew
Somehow,
that she was
Mike
going
and
to fall
Abby's
and
aunt
die,
survives the previous movie, despite it being heavily implied that she died. I guess Golden Freddy wasn't lying when he said,
"Silly Aunt Jane, she fell asleep."
Anyway, the aunt has been using the story of the animatronics to try to make money, and all of the murders and ghosts and all that jazz have become popular folklore because of that. And I mean, like, really popular, like almost as if there were a whole series of hugely popular video games made about the subject.
I wonder what,
all of the middle and high school aged kids in this film seem to be about Freddy's. But hey, you know, we wouldn't really know anything about that in the real world, huh?
Yeah.
Real talk, I do love the acknowledgement of the fan base here. It's very Anyway, things seem to be looking up for Mike and Abby. They're in a new house, Abby's in a new school, and the money troubles they had in the last movie are basically not mentioned here at all. It's also very clear that Mike and Abby are doing a bit better for themselves, though they don't really talk about it. He seems to have started a new job that's let him invest in a new house. So it is
that's not the same house
Either
from the
way,
old movie.
affording a new home like this would have been easier for Mike if he worked with...
I'm saying it like it's a freaking, like, 80s movie. It's like a 2-year-old movie. In the last movie, sorry.
Partner for today's theory, Chime. Especially because
we're not really here for that. Make sure to check out the Chime promotion if your heart so desires. Link to his channel will be down in the description, but we are not really here for that. So
our code on screen. It's just more cash on top of all of the other money you'll be saving with your high-yield savings account. So thank you again to Chime for sponsoring this video, but let's get back into the wild world of Five Nights at Freddy's. The animatronics, however, seem to be either broken, or the spirits are gone, or dormant, or something like that. They just aren't really active anymore at all, much to Abby's sadness. Also, Vanessa isn't really doing too well.
They, like, disappeared until like the very end of the movie, so
either she keeps having traumatic flashbacks about her father, which, you know, is understandable.
I will put a spoiler warning at the very start of this video, just in case if you don't want to be spoiled. But if you've already seen the movie, or if you just don't care about spoilers, you can go ahead and watch.
Given the decades of abuse and literally being stabbed by him. With Mike's encouragement, Vanessa goes home and tries to confront her memories of her father inside of her head using her dreams, similar to what Mike did with Garrett from the first movie. More or less, this looks like she's using something called lucid dreams to confront her nightmares. If you don't know, a lucid dream is one where you realize that you are asleep and dreaming, and because of that, you can kind of do whatever you want. Want to fly? You can. Want to shoot fireballs out of your hands? You can. I've only ever had like 2 in my life, and they were
I never had a
Though,
lizard
that being
before.
said, I hadn't ever
Believe
really
it or
heard
not,
of
I'd
them
never
being
had
used
one.
in a therapeutic way like this. I did look into this a little bit, and there was a study from 2023 that examined this idea, and though it acknowledged that it needed to do further research with a larger study and sample size, the initial results were encouraging. So hey, that's neat. We got some scientifically accurate therapy here in FNaF. Anyway, we see Vanessa confront Afton in her dream, but he seems a bit too strong for her as she reverts to her child self. She runs and hides in his workshop in their home, finding the circus baby animatronic hidden here as well. It then lights up and looks down at her.
Yep.
It's a genuinely creepy moment, and obviously this is significant for a few reasons. So
Because
this is the
Circus Baby is not supposed to show up inside the second movie. Or at least I don't think so. Because Circus Baby only first showed up in the games in the 5th game. So if we're going by game standpoint, you would think that she would have shown up by the 5th movie. But that's just not what happens here. But at the same time, we also had Balloon Boy and Shadow Freddy in the last movie. So.
film's version of the circus baby from the sister location video game, an animatronic that was haunted by the soul of Elizabeth Afton, daughter of the game's William Afton. So basically, the game version of the Vanessa character we have here in the movies. Elizabeth was also the age Vanessa is here in this dream sequence when she got put into the baby animatronic, so this was absolutely intentional on Scott's part. Oh, and additionally, in the books, Baby sort of was like Afton's helper, right? So this makes me wonder if he was planning on doing something similar here in the movies. And, you know, the very fact that Vanessa is still alive makes me wonder if Afton gave up on that particular idea, or
Maybe.
if something happened that changed his plans. Or maybe someone else got stuffed into Baby. At this point, who knows? Oh, this does also add one small complication to something we saw in the FNaF 1.
What I think is going on, right? It's similar to the Twisted Ones novel. If you guys don't know, Twisted Ones novel, there is William Afton's daughter, Elizabeth. William Afton made Circus Baby. She went too close to Circus Baby. She got killed by Circus Baby. And, originally Circus Baby was not made by William, but she was like made by Henry, and to basically be the adult version of his daughter. And William took that animatronic and used it to commit his own crimes. And Elizabeth found it and died inside of it. That's basically what happened.
Movie. If you don't remember,
And then, yeah.
we also saw a somewhat similar Springlock animatronic in that first FNaF movie. This was the one that all of the ghost kids wanted to shove Abby into so that she would join them. However, looking back at this thing, it doesn't look a ton like the traditional baby animatronic, and it borrows some ideas from the Ella animatronic from the Silver Eyes novel. Just to be clear, I would guess that this was intended to be baby originally, but after the success of that first movie, plans changed and they have introduced a more game-accurate version of baby in the film series now. So genuinely no idea if we're ever even going to touch that Ella baby animatronic from the first movie again. It might just be lost to history. Oh, and something else worth pointing out in this scene. After encountering Baby, Afton finds Vanessa and says that she will always be his. She then runs away from Afton and manages to push his dream self over the edge of their stairway in an act of defiance. He falls to the floor, injured, but looks back up at her and says again that she will always be his. This line is later repeated by another character towards the end of the movie, saying that all of Afton's children will always be his.
His
They
son.
can't escape that fate. And what I find interesting here is what isn't said, right? I think that there was a way to incorporate Afton's iconic line about wanting to put things back together right here in this spot. Like, hey, I wanted to put our family back together, even from beyond the grave. So I wonder if this film is going to be tweaking Afton's obsession slightly. Like, instead of wanting to put the broken pieces of his life into animatronics and family family back together, Afton is obsessed with controlling his family and animatronics and victims.
I would not
that would
be
even fit
shocked
with a
about
lot of
that.
what we saw in FNaF 1, where he wanted to control the ghosts of the children in those animatronics, right? Anyway, just a random thought I had. Let's move on. Elsewhere, the plot must continue as a group of paranormal investigators led by a woman named Lisa are invited to come take a look at the original Freddy's location, the one where Charlotte was killed. And who invited him here? Well, a security guard named Mike. But shock, it's not our Mike, but instead a new character named Michael. With probably the creepiest face I've ever seen. Like, they really nailed the casting on this one. My guy looks like a Skarsgård. Anyway, as they explore the building, Lisa finds a music box next to the machinery with the puppet inside and turns it off, causing the marionette to come to life. Yeah, it's been possessed by Charlotte, and the puppet has wireless control over all of the rest of the animatronics in the building. And because of that, you can guess what comes next. All of the paranormal investigators are killed off in fun, awesome ways, while the puppet possesses Lisa's body with special effects that are genuinely creative and creepy. Though interestingly, Michael, who
although it's more effective with Abby, but
is spared. Wonder if that'll be significant later. So another thing I wanted to mention here is the fact that the puppet has a brand new power, taking control of human bodies. That was never really something we saw from the puppet in the games, and I'm not gonna lie, it really caught me off guard in the theaters, and not just because the special effects were creepy or whatever. To me, this seems like a strange choice that Scott is making now to help make other things make sense later, especially with stories like Help Wanted down the road. Those games dealt with weird AI possession, and going out of his way to introduce that sort of idea now, all of a sudden, that's a lot of work down the road that the FNaF series doesn't need to do. Now awake, the puppet lures Abby to the original location by pretending to be the spirits of the FNaF 1 animatronics, befriending her and helping her with some school projects. Realizing what's going on and recognizing the work of Charlotte, Vanessa also returns to the original location. It's here where she reveals that the puppet uses that wireless technology I was just talking about that is way ahead of its time to control all of the animatronics in the building. And I mean, it is just super crazy.
All the animatronics. Not the original animatronics, because they're not in that pizzeria. They're inside of a separate pizzeria and haunted by separate kids. So,
y'all, I can't connect to my Wi-Fi if there are like 2 walls between my phone and the router. This is wild stuff. I know that technology in FNaF has always been ridiculously advanced, but when you see it in live action and something specifically confirmed to be set in 2002 when cell phones looked like this, man, it's just a bit of a gobsmack. But Vanessa also locked down the animatronics using a special firewall so they can't leave the location, something the puppet wants to do to get revenge on all of the parents who didn't listen to her and caused her death. Why she doesn't blame Afton, or at the very least like the Golden Bunny for her death instead of the parents, who knows? It's actually something I legitimately left the theater trying to wrap my head around, so if you have any ideas, please leave them in the comments. Anyway,
okay. I'll tell you later. Basically, the reason why she doesn't blame Afton for her death is because the parents, she tried telling them that Afton was luring a child into the back room. None of them listened. Not a single one. Now she's pissed. So, that's why she's after parents.
It threatens Abby and forces Vanessa to give her the code to set them free so they can go attack the parents.
Well, that's why I think she's after parents.
This was actually the scene from the script pages Scott released last year for the 10th anniversary of FNaF. I originally didn't think that this was the correct page and wrote it off because, according to the script, it was only going to be happening on page 25, which was way too early for this to happen in the movie. Like, seriously, even in the final product, page 25 is ridiculously early and does not line up with the time at all. I really have to wonder if Scott changed to the page numbers to hide this, or if this was like something from a different draft of the script, or man, who knows at this point. Anyway, around this same time, Mike meets Charlotte's dad, Henry, and gets a bit of an exposition dump, and then heads to the original pizzeria where he frees Vanessa. She heads out to stop the animatronics as Mike basically plays the actual FNaF 2 video game IRL, and also somehow gets snuck up on by all of the animatronics like multiple times. They make such a big deal about how loud the footsteps of these things are, but they jump scare Mike right next to his face. It's classic horror movie logic at its finest. Anyway, after several scary scenes, the animatronics are all eventually shut down.
I gotta make this a thumbnail.
But they jump scare Mike
I gotta make
right
this a
next
thumbnail.
to his face. It's classic horror.
Logan's gonna be so pissed about this. He's gonna be so pissed. I'm not gonna make this a thumbnail. But I'm gonna show Logan. This is gonna make him so pissed. Hold on. Okay. Took a snapshot.
Movie logic at its finest. Anyway, after several scary scenes, the animatronics are all eventually shut down, but the puppet possesses Abby's body. But thankfully, Mike is able to free her with another music box he conveniently got from Henry. But then Michael shows up with the reactivated animatronics and reveals that he is, dun dun dun, Michael Afton, Vanessa's brother. So this right here is actually a pretty big deal because for the longest time, we thought that Mike Schmidt and Michael Afton were the same character in the games. If this is Scott officially separating those characters, at least in this canon, that makes a lot of things make way more sense. But that is a discussion for another channel. I'm pretty sure Tom is going to be talking about that in a video over at our sister location Game Theory. So go check that out. Either way, Michael wants to continue his father's work here, both in murder and in animatronics, which
he's going to be like, oh, okay. So Mike Schmidt is really a separate person in the first game, and then in the second game we get Michael Afton.
I suppose explains his plan here? It's a bit unclear, but it seems like Michael wanted to wake up Charlotte, or has been trying to, or something. Like, he says, "Welcome back, Charlotte," when she wakes up, but hasn't been successful in bringing her back himself. Like, he seems shocked when Lisa actually manages to wake Charlotte up. But again, that's strange, since it was pretty obvious that the music box was keeping her asleep. Whatever he was doing here, it's just, it was very unclear. And it seems like it was setting up something down the road, rather than making total sense in the here and now. Anyway, Michael wants Vanessa to join him and Charlotte in their rampage, since they will, quote, always belong to Afton. But Vanessa refuses. And just before our main characters bite the dust, the FNaF 1 animatronics show up like they're hopping out of
it's literally FNaF Endgame. That's what it is.
Portals at the end of Avengers Endgame, defeating the animatronics and saving the day, but sacrificing themselves to do so. Michael runs away.
They run out of their energy power thing to save Michael, Abby, and Vanessa, and this kid right here in the blonde hair shows up and is like, Michael, I can't hold him back much longer. I'm going to heaven. And
Freddy explains that they won't be able to hold Afton's spirit in stasis anymore before disappearing into the afterlife. Gonna be real, that kind of took me aback. I'm surprised that they'd let the original animatronic spirit kids go this early in the series. Like,
I thought they were
going to
say that for FNaF 6,
the actors would be growing up and it wouldn't be consistent, maybe? But I wonder what big plans they have coming as a consequence of this. Mike then turns around and basically dumps Vanessa, telling her that he can't trust her and that she should stay away from him and his family.
Which is fair.
Was absolutely ridiculous, to be honest, and my whole theater was like, dude, what? This understandably devastates Vanessa, who basically just chose Mike and Abby over her own family, and allows for the puppet to come in and possess her body, which is fascinating. It almost feels like they're moving the storyline with Vanny and Vanessa from Security Breach up to these new movies. Either way, cue the end credits and post-credit scene showing a bunch of random guys finding Springtrap and picking him up for a new FNaF-themed horror animatronic that they're building. And then a voicemail from Henry revealing his origins as Afton's business partner, and then his death at the hands of something? Probably the puppet. It was a little unclear, but it was probably the puppet. Man, so this movie was a lot, and a lot happens in it. But my biggest takeaway? They are taking these movies in a direction I just did not see coming. See, if you've been watching the theories here on the channel for a while, you'll know that both me and Matt thought that they were going to be combining and simplifying a lot of ideas and even whole storylines and games. That's why
For,
Mike
like, the
wasn't
general
related
audience.
to Afton, or why Security Breach era ideas
But
and characters
not?
showed up in FNaF 1. That would then lead to the FNaF 3 movie being more of a Security Breach inspired story with the glam rock animatronics and Pizzaplex. But this movie, more or less, threw that completely out the window.
Yep.
Oh, not only is Mike Schmidt a character, but so is Michael Afton, and in fact, we're going to make a joke about their names being the exact same. The FNaF 3 game might be a bit too weird and small scale to adapt to film. Too bad. That's basically exactly what they're setting up for the next movie. Deal with it. And then they're adding in more ideas on top of that, like the puppet being able to possess humans. Scott is going big with these films, and I just gotta respect that, man. But while that didn't turn out how I expected, other things did. Particularly what I said in our last theory before this movie came out about how these movies are really about Scott reclaiming his story and retelling it in the way that he wants to.
Yeah.
You probably all know at this point that early FNaF games weren't really planned out. Scott was flying by the seat of his pants, riding off of some
Literally. Like the first game wasn't even planned out. It was like to show, oh, Chipper and Son, it's scary. Oh, I'll make a scary game. I'll make a horror game. Made Five Nights at Freddy's. Made Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Well, Five Nights at Freddy's 1 got popular, and then made Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Made Five Nights at Freddy's 3 to end everything. Springtrap's not scary enough. Made FNaF 4.
unexpected
Go
success,
on,
and some odd choices were made
so
because
on,
of
so
that.
forth.
Timelines got funky because some characters had to exist and to be active and do conflicting things decades apart. You know, that sort of thing. But now that Scott is getting more or less a second pass on this story here, all of a sudden
Yeah.
the confusion can be put
Yeah,
to
he's remaking the story into how he sees fits.
rest. And a good example of that, the fact that FNaF 3 is going to be adapted, but in the same time frame as these first two stories. If you don't remember, the FNaF 3 video game took place like 30 years after the closure of the original Fazbear location, in a sort of theme park horror attraction based off of the folklore of the murders. It was about the nostalgia that Freddy's built up in that universe, similar to Chuck E. Cheese here in ours. And though it doesn't seem connected, this is also why I believe that they focused so heavily on FazFest here in the FNaF 2 movie when it didn't really go anywhere. Like, that was weird, right?
Yeah.
They mentioned this big festival event
Where
dedicated to
where it was just one scene. Just one scene in that entire... How long was it? Like, an hour and 45 minutes? Or something like that? An hour and 45-minute movie.
Freddy's, and we do see it very briefly, but
Yeah.
it's not really a central focus of the movie. It's basically in like two scenes. Like, it almost felt tacked
Sorry,
on,
two
right?
scenes.
I thought that was an interesting choice. Like, I would have set the climax of the film there if I were writing this instead of the Schmidt's house. But looking back, that wasn't the purpose of this in this story. It was setting up that there was this nostalgic tinted love for the Freddy's IP so that the Fazbear's Fright attraction could make sense for the FNaF 3 movie in the same part of the timeline with Mike and Abby and Vanessa. Now, there doesn't need to be a time jump, which makes the game timeline so difficult to parse. And that wasn't the only thing being used here to set up future stories. Like, all of those lucid dreams with Mike and Vanessa in these first two movies, that's absolutely setting up FNaF 4 and all of its weirdness and dreams, showing us that not only are dreams significant for characters in these films, but that you can interact with ghosts.
Yeah, the dreams are gonna go against him. And, well, both of them probably, inside of the fourth movie, because FNaF 4 takes place in nightmares. And the nightmare animatronics are gonna be there. It's gonna be so cool. Hopefully, I don't know. I'm just hoping it's gonna be good. Okay, I'm a big fan of this franchise. I just really want it to be good.
inside of them. Similar thing by introducing Michael Afton here, setting him up for a story arc that could include the stories of the games FNaF 4 through 7, especially if Josh Hutcherson decides that he wants to hang up the security guard jacket after the third film. Which actually brings me to my next point here, the big one. So, if the movies are pretty much adapting the games one-to-one as they appear to be doing now, that means that we can split up how they're going to be doing these stories into, like, 3 eras. Or rather, kind of 3 places where they could end if they so choose to and they stop making money. There's the original trilogy, FNaF 1 through 3, which I'll call the Mike trilogy for the films. Then there's FNaF 4 through 7, which I'll call the Michael arc. And then everything after that, with Help Wanted and Security Breach and all that jazz. We'll call that the Mimic series. That is going to be the future of these movies, with Mike and Afton's story concluding with FNaF 3, Michael becoming the central figure in the next series, and then, well, who knows what they'll do with the Mimic stuff. That's gonna be so weird. Ironically though, by expanding these movies out again and doing one film for each game like they appear to be doing, that creates an entirely new problem because of earlier decisions.
Which I just want to say real quickly that in the game timeline, it took Afton 30 years to rot in that suit and become a decaying corpse. Which makes sense, by the way. Which makes sense. And that the suit got all moldy and miscolored. Where it was all withered. And that it lost its color, its yellowish color, to green. And Afton's corpse inside turned it, and Afton's body inside turned into a corpse. It makes sense for the games for it to take place 30 years after, but for the movie, that it only took 2 years for that to happen, to withered spring Bonnie, spring trap, that just doesn't make sense to me.
See, I wonder if Vanessa being in these early movies happened because Scott and Blumhouse weren't sure how many of these they were going to get. I stand by our theory that early on, they wanted to have as much recognizable FNaF stuff in one movie as possible to really get butts in seats. But now, how the hell are they going to do Security Breach if Vanessa is here in these stories? Like, sure, they have set up a sort of...
Which, yes, I do think that... I know that that's a completely different timeline and stuff, but still.
Vanessa relationship between the movie Vanessa and Charlotte, but I just can't see that lasting past the next movie or the conclusion of Charlotte's story. They might just have to introduce a new character in the Security Breach movies that fulfills the same purpose. And if they really want to mess with us, they'll even name her Elizabeth. Oh, and also, they have to do something with Garrett in the future, right? Like,
that'd be poking at our brains.
Felt like they just dropped him completely for this movie, but he has to show up again, right? Like, hey, maybe if Golden Freddy is gone and no longer the vengeful spirits, maybe Charlotte can take on that role and Garrett can kind of be the protector of souls that Charlie was in the movie. Or, so. Man, maybe at this point I'm just grasping for silly straws. But hey, that's just a theory.
A film theory.
Yeah. And cut. Up next on Film Theory, the Walton Files are back.
Okay,
But
yeah. Film Theory will be down in the description down below. Make sure to check out their channel and the original video. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video and our live stream.